Orthworm broke competitive singles Pokemon, but before that, it was Cyclizar breaking the meta. Both Pokemon were using Shed Tail to wreak havoc across the competitive scene. In late 2022, Cyclizar was outspeeding everyone and dropping Shed Tails to powerful Pokemon multiple times a game with its Regenerator ability. Ultimately, that was too much and Cyclizar was banned. But even after Cyclizar was banned, the problem didn't end. Orthworm filled up the void and dominated the game instead. The problem was Shed Tail, and in the end, Shed Tail was banned and Cyclizar was unbanned. The windy story of Shed Tail is a little complicated, and I'm here to set the record straight. How did Shed Tail break the 6v6 metagame not once, but twice? The story of Shed Tail begins right at the release date of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Cyclizar was revealed to have a signature move known as Shed Tail. Shed Tail was like Substitute and Baton Pass in one move at the cost of 50% of your HP, and you couldn't pass stats. VGC Doubles, the official format, never had Baton Pass strategies catch on. In Doubles, there's two Pokemon attacking at the same time, and Baton Pass doesn't work as well because the Baton Passers can get double targeted. At least one turn to set up and one turn to Baton Pass means you're taking up to 4 attacks just to get a chain going. While you can support a Baton Passer with moves like Rage Powder, it's usually not worth it, and Baton Pass as a whole takes too long to develop. By combining Baton Pass and Substitute into one move, you speed up the process, and now Shed Tail strategies are a usable technique in the VGC format, something that really wasn't common before. However, in 6v6 Smogon singles, Baton Pass was not something random. It wasn't even just a known threat. It was the biggest threat. Baton Pass as a whole has been banned for generations now for being undeniably overpowered. No top player disagrees with the notion that Baton Pass was single-handedly the most controversial move arguably of all time. Stat boosting is one of the most powerful things you can do in Pokemon. In singles, when you only have one Pokemon in front of you and 6 Pokemon to work with, it's much easier to spiral something out of control with the Baton Pass. Shed Tail cannot Baton Pass a boost to a Pokemon, but it can Baton Pass a substitute. It was a trade-off, but Shed Tail was still very clearly a strong move. Shed Tail enabled a Pokemon to cleanly switch into the game with Substitute's protection. Then, with that one turn of protection, it can go for a setup move like Dragon Dance or Quiver Dance or Shell Smash or whatever. Shed Tail didn't pass stats like Baton Pass, but it passed the opportunity to get them. The most devastating Pokemon in the format were already strong, but they were even stronger when another Pokemon could give them an opportunity to do something like double their attack or special attack. It's not easy to simply break the substitute on entry. Say you use a fighting move to predict a Shed Tail to Kingambit. They might simply go to Volcarona and then go Quiver Dance as your fighting move doesn't break the substitute. Even if you do get that predict right, a Pokemon like Cyclizar can use Regenerator to create that situation multiple times in a game. Shed Tail created a nasty situation where if you get a Shed Tail predict right, you hang on, but if you lose, it's almost like game over. Shed Tail made the rich Pokemon even richer. Gen 9 has 2 legal users of Shed Tail, Cyclizar and Orthworm. Cyclizar was a dominant Shed Tail Pokemon and saw large amounts of usage. Orthworm saw basically 0 usage. But that's not because it was bad, it was because there was no reason to use it when you can use Shed Tail Cyclizar instead. The main advantage of Cyclizar was that it had the Regenerator ability. That means over the course of the game, it could Shed Tail multiple times, each time leading to a potentially game-winning sequence. Beyond Shed Tail, Cyclizar is a pretty mediocre Pokemon. It does have some cool support moves like Rapid Spin and Knockoff, and some high power moves like Double Edge and Draco Meteor, but those are pretty average in isolation. Ultimately, the decision was made to ban Cyclizar. It was overpowered. But this raised a question. Cyclizar was clearly overpowered because of Shed Tail. Why not ban Shed Tail? Why do you have to ban the whole Pokemon? It's a valid question with a valid answer, but not a lot of people know why. All they know that Smogon doesn't do complex bans, but most people don't really even know what that means in the first place. The reason is fundamental to the tiering system as a whole. Smogon organizes Pokemon into tiers based on how often they're used, with tiers being able to ban a Pokemon if it's too overpowered for them. The key is that you're tiering Pokemon. When you start banning elements of a Pokemon, you're now tiering parts of a Pokemon, and the system as a whole loses its meaning. For example, let's say instead of banning Annihilape, you ban Rage Fist on Annihilape and it ends up in, say, the RU tier. Saying that Annihilape is an RU tiered Pokemon has lost all its meaning because you took away what made it Annihilape. Comparing the tier of Annihilape to Great Tusk has some meaning, but comparing Annihilape without Rage Fist to Great Tusk doesn't mean anything to anybody. You're supposed to be tiering Pokemon, not parts of them. In theory, you could just nerf any Pokemon instead of banning them. Why ban Iron Bundle? Just take away Hydro Pump so it doesn't have the deadly Ice-Water combination. That's the reason why Smogon prefers to ban Pokemon, but that doesn't always happen. There are exceptional situations. Baton Pass is the main one. Every Pokemon who gets that move can be overpowered with it, so it made more sense to ban that one move instead of banning every single Pokemon that could use it viably. Same thing with Shadow Tag and Arena Trap. They're fundamentally broken is the idea. Smogon's general idea is that it's okay to make an exception if it's breaking multiple Pokemon, because then it's clear that the move is the issue and not the sum of the move and the Pokemon's parts. Dugtrio being a PU Pokemon doesn't have any meaning because you took away Arena Trap, but that was deemed an acceptable concession. Incidentally, Smogon preferring to ban Pokemon is why Houndstone was banned instead of Last Respects. That is ultimately how the community decided to make these rulings. So once Cyclizar was banned, people began looking at the other Shed Tail Pokemon in Orthworm. Orthworm could notably not regen to Shed Tail over and over again, but still, 1 or 2 Shed Tails is often all you need. Even one Shed Tail can set up one of the tier's most powerful Pokemon and let them break a team. Even if it doesn't destroy all 6 Pokemon, it can often take out enough to make the game a blowout. We saw a lot of hyper offense structures similar to Cyclizar's Golden Era. Orthworm paired up with 4 to 5 setup sweepers could dominate a game. Orthworm also had the interesting benefit of being a slow Shed Tail Pokemon. It could tank a hit and then Shed Tail the substitute to a friend, protecting that incoming Pokemon. You could argue that that was even better than Cyclizar's fast Shed Tail. Through the months after the Cyclizar ban, it was very clear that Shed Tail Orthworm was still a problem, for many of the same reasons as Cyclizar. Hindsight is 2020, but it would have been dumb to ban Shed Tail instead of Cyclizar back then. Orthworm at the time had close to 0% usage. Even back then, people knew that Orthworm could be broken, but you couldn't justify banning a 0% usage Pokemon because you think it's going to be overpowered. You have to see it in action. Ultimately though, we did see it in action, and Orthworm Hyper Offense was a staple all throughout major tournaments. The decision was made that with Shed Tail breaking both Cyclizar and Orthworm, it made more sense to ban Shed Tail than 2 Pokemon. So Shed Tail was banned and Cyclizar was unbanned, thus ending the Shed Tail era of OU. Neither Pokemon are expected to be good anymore.